Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The Sun Moon Empire's Soul Engineer legions had already revealed their strength in the war. They couldn't rely on traditional methods against such legions anymore. It was only possible to overcome them by unleashing the potential of Soul Engineers. Another series of strategies were discussed before Elder Xian dismissed the conference. Bei Bei and a few deans left together. They needed to get busy preparing for the Tang Sect Soul Engineer Legion's formation. Elder Xian kept Huo Yuhao behind. Yuhao, I'm afraid that you'll need to return to the front line. You aren't just the only ultimate soldier nurtured by the academy, you also have immense spiritual detection abilities. Although it's dangerous, no one can compare to you in terms of your surveillance skills. It's because of your timely discovery that the Star Luo Empire was able to uncover the Sun Moon Empire's scheme. Return to the Star Luo Empire and continue to aid them. At the same time, get some of the Sun Moon Empire's surveillance soul tools if possible. They will be very important to our future. I have discussed this matter with Teacher Xian before. He said that producing surveillance soul tools requires a lot of special and rare metals. Only the Sun Moon Empire produces them, especially aerial surveillance soul tools. Can you bring some of them back? Huo Yuhao nodded and replied, I'll try my best. You must be careful. Elder Xian said with a serious look, I'm afraid that the strength of that death god's ray is something even I can't bear. I'd be seriously hurt if I was the one resisting it. However, the person unleashing such a powerful attack definitely has to pay a huge price for it. It doesn't just operate based on soul power, it also involves a fusion of spiritual power. Its strength can even exceed an attack from an ultimate Doluo. If you have the opportunity, you must uncover the secret of this death god, so that it's more convenient for us to deal with it in the future. Otherwise, I don't know how many lives from the Star Luo Empire will be lost before we can tackle it. Huo Yuhao nodded seriously. Just like Elder Xian had mentioned, the entire Star Luo Empire, and even the other empires of the Doluo continent, would be greatly threatened in the future if this death god couldn't be handled. Many lives would be lost because of the terrifying strength it possessed. Furthermore, higher-end combat strength would be needed. An ordinary attack wasn't sufficient to allow the Sun Moon Empire to fire such a powerful soul tool. Elder Xian said, Go back and discuss things with Teacher Xian. Although the production method of such a soul tool is very mysterious, there are definitely ways to find out how it was made. Oh yes, the Academy will also send a few people to follow you to the front line this time. Otherwise, your powers won't be sufficient. Furthermore, it's not very appropriate for you to remain there using the identity of a normal soldier. The Academy will produce a document which will recommend the few of you meet the Marshal of the Star Luo Empire's Northwestern Field Army, the White Tiger Duke. All of you will coordinate with him. You're from the Star Luo Empire. It's fine if you undertake a military role. Huo Yuhao's eyes brightened and he said, Elder Xian, do you mean that we'll start aiding the Star Luo Empire now? Elder Xian shook his head and replied, I don't consider it to be aiding them. We still can't touch the higher-end combat strength of the Academy, because the Heavenly Soul Empire might be attacked by the Sun Moon Empire. At this time, the Academy can't incline itself towards either the Star Luo or Heavenly Soul Empire. Otherwise, tongues will wag. As a result, those who are following you this time will be mostly from the Tang sect. In my opinion, Shusansha and Jiang Nan should follow you. They aren't that useful when it comes to soul tools, anyway. Hikai 2 should remain here. Given that Xiao Xiao is so close to Hikai 2, she can remain here too. I'll not touch Bei Bei, so you can choose one more person from the Tang sect, and the Academy will send one person as well. What do you think about Tang Wutong? When Elder Xian finished speaking, there was already a smiling intent on his face. Huo Yuhao was stunned, and revealed a surprised look on his face. In fact, he was also very conflicted. When Elder Xian said that he should return to the front line, the first feeling that he had was that he was unwilling to do so. There was only one reason. Tang Wutong. It didn't matter whether Tang Wutong had anything to do with Wang Dong'er and Wang Qiu'er. Her appearance already left Huo Yuhao very conflicted. He was willing to pay any price to remain here. If Tang Wutong was Wang Dong'er, he had to try his best to help her to regain her memories. If she wasn't, he still had to at least interact with her to be certain. He was in a much better mood when Elder Xian said he was going to send Tang Wutong to the front lines. He hesitated a little before saying, "But didn't she apply to be a teacher in the academy? Will there be any problems if she follows us?" Elder Xian smiled and shook his head. He said, "Don't worry, she isn't just here to apply for a teaching role. She also wants to apply for a position in the Shrek Guardians. The academy will use this opportunity to test her, and I'm going to use the excuse that you're the chief examiner, so she'll follow your orders. She's also a soul sage, and her abilities aren't weak. Didn't you experience them before? As for the sparks that could potentially form between the two of you, and whether she really has lost her memories, that'll depend on your own efforts to find out. You are so outstanding. Even if Tang Wutong isn't the same person as Wang Dong'er, I believe you can still successfully chase her." Huo Yuhao's eyes turned a bit dimmer, and he shook his head. He said, "Why would I chase her if she's not Dong'er? But I believe she is." "Thanks, Elder Xian." As he spoke, he took a step back before bowing seriously to Elder Xian. Elder Xian smiled and said, "Silly kid, the academy will always be your strongest backer, no matter what. Go now. I'll talk to her immediately. Rest for a day and return to the Tang sect to choose your people. Tomorrow morning, return here and take her along with you." After leaving the Sea God's pavilion, Huo Yuhao bowed towards the golden tree once again, before he flew across Sea God's lake and left the academy. He rushed towards the Tang sect. Right now, he was feeling very complex. He was excited, delighted, and even a little uncomfortable. He was most afraid of finding out that Tang Wutong and Wang Dong'er weren't the same person. If that was the case, all his hopes would be dashed. If this were the past, he certainly wouldn't be so nervous about everything. After all, Tang Wutong and Wang Dong'er were simply two alike. However, things were different now. Given there was also a Wang Qiu'er, he was unsure whether Tang Wutong was Wang Dong'er. He had to find out everything for himself. He quickly returned to the Tang sect with these feelings. Bei Bei, who had returned to the sect earlier, had already informed everyone, and they were all waiting for Huo Yuhao in the conference hall. Little Junior. He Kai-tu was the first to rush up and gave Huo Yuhao a big hug. Shu Sanxia was next. When Huo Yuhao opened his arms towards Jiang Nan and Xiao Xiao, he was stopped by the both of them. Shu Sanxia fiercely asked, "Rascal, what are you trying to do?" Huo Yuhao chuckled and said, "Of course I'm trying to get closer to my senior sisters. It took me so long before I returned. I must treat everyone the same way, right? Don't even think about it." Shu Sanxia and He Kai-tu said at almost the same time. Everyone was so amused that they burst out laughing. Huo Yuhao was a little annoyed as he shrugged his shoulders and said, "All right, I won't hug them." Shu Sanxia also relaxed his grip on Huo Yuhao and touched him lightly before saying, "Little Junior, you should know about Tang Wutong, right? She's too much like to Dong'er. What's going on? First, it's Dong'er. Then, it's Qiu'er. Now we have a Tang Wutong. Don't tell me they're triplets." When he said the word triplets, his eyes immediately brightened. "Ayo!" Shu Sanxia screamed immediately after that. One of his ears was already being pulled by a delicate hand. Jiang Nan said fiercely, "What are you thinking of? Triplets? You're even salivating. HMPH. Shu Sanxia hurriedly laughed. I wouldn't dare. Don't even talk about triplets. Even if there were 10 of them, they couldn't compare to my Nan. Yuhao, look at you. The moment you return, you cause an internal conflict in my family." Everyone laughed again. Huo Yuhao smiled as he said, "This has nothing to do with me. It's your own problem." He paused for a moment before saying, "As for Tang Wutong, I don't know if she's Donga. However, I believe that I'll be able to tell if I interact with her more. Shu Sancha said, good luck, little junior. Whether she is or she's not, just get it done first. Anyway, guys will never be at a disadvantage. Are you itching for a beating again? Jiang Nan shouted and pulled him to one side. Huo Yuhao was a little helpless as he shook his head. Bei smiled and asked, little junior, are you leaving again after returning? Huo Yuhao nodded and replied, I'll be leaving tomorrow. Elder Xian held me back to tell me that he wanted me to help the Star Luo Empire's military do some surveillance work. At the same time, he wants me to obtain some aerial surveillance soul tools. Oh yes, I brought one back this time. I'll send it to teacher Xian later. Bei furrowed his brow and said, little junior, you are always running about so much. Won't it delay your cultivation? Furthermore, the front line is so dangerous. What if the death god's ray that you were talking about? Huo Yuhao replied, I'm not really that afraid of the death god's ray. Ever since Chioa sacrificed herself, I took over her power of destiny. Before the death god's ray appears, I'll definitely have some kind of premonition. That transcendent soul tool isn't much of a threat to me. I'll be fine as long as I don't get close to it. According to my observations, the effective range of the death god's ray is around 5,000 meters. The most frightening part about it is that it doesn't just target one spot. It can perform a sweep, which makes the area that it covers much wider. There's another mission that I have to perform when I go to the front line this time. Find out as much as I can about the death god's ray. I'm supposed to find out what happens when it's fired, and what kind of destruction it brings. Bei was shocked, and blurted out, little junior, that death god's ray is used by the death god Doluo. He's very mysterious. This mission is going to be very difficult. No, I must talk to Elder Xian. How can he let you do something like this? Huo Yuhao hurriedly said, Eldest Senior, don't be anxious. Elder Xian didn't force me to go on this mission. He told me that I could explore further if I had the opportunity to. Furthermore, I have my spiritual detection. My spiritual detection can cover a greater distance than that death god's ray. It wouldn't be too much of a problem for me to examine it from a distance. If I can't win, I can still flee. In addition, Elder Xian also asked me to bring a few people along with me this time. I can choose from the Tang Sect's members. He recounted everything that Elder Xian had told him to the others. Bei didn't say anything, but Shu Sancha was already jumping in excitement. This is great. I can finally leave Shrek City. Little junior, you don't know how bored I've been. I've been helping Bei deal with all types of matters in the Tang Sect over these past few days. It's been extremely annoying. It'll be great to step onto a battlefield. This is set, Nan and I will follow you. Oh yes, my soul power is at rank 70 already. Can you help me get a spirit when we return? Nan's soul power is also almost at that stage too. I want a nice and smart spirit. Oh, 7 rings is just suitable. Huo Yuhao was stunned when he looked at Shu Sancha. Everyone's abilities had been growing very quickly. He then turned to look at Bei and asked, Eldest Senior, what about you? Bei smiled as he nodded and said, I'm at around the same level as him. I'll need a spirit soon, too. If you don't return again, we'll have to go to the Spirit Pagoda. Of course, we'll have to wait for Nan. Kai too is also at rank 70. After passing the tests in the Yin-Yang Love Querying Valley, everyone's soul power had improved by leaps and bounds. Apart from Xiao, they were all at the rank 70 bottleneck. Huo Yuhao said, why don't we enter the Great Star Do Forest directly and ask for suitable soul beasts as spirits? That would be the most effective solution. Shu Sancha chuckled as he answered, it'll definitely be the most effective if you lead us in. Those savage beasts treat you like a gem. Jiang Nan knocked his head and said, can you speak more nicely? What gem? Huo Yuhao is now the one controlling the destiny of the entire Great Star Do Forest. Huo Yuhao thought for a moment before replying, since this is the case, let's leave in 2 days. We'll go to the Great Star Do Forest tomorrow. Xiao Xiao, how far off are you? Xiao Xiao was a little depressed as she answered, 3 ranks. I'm at rank 67 now. Huo Yuhao laughed. Don't be depressed. At our age, we're already considered some of the best on the continent with our current soul power. If you continue being depressed, the other soul masters are better off being dead. Don't worry, I'll return soon. Once you reach rank 70, don't be too impatient to obtain another soul ring. Wait for me to come back, and we'll help you get one. He turned to Bei Bei and asked, oh yes, eldest senior, I forgot one more thing. What about our 2 dark golden terraclaw bears? Bei Bei replied, they are in the outer courtyard. Speaking of those 2 fellows, they are almost bankrupting our sect with the amount of food that they eat. They eat everything, and the amount of food that they eat is almost equivalent to the total amount of food that all of us consume. It hasn't even been 2 years, but the 2 of them are already more than 2 meters tall. Their claws are also very destructive. No construction material is able to resist the strength of their claws. The last time, Big Blackie even secretly ate the medicine that the academy gave to teacher Xian. But that fellow is quite interesting. He gave some of the medicine that he stole to Lil Blackie. After eating the medicine, the 2 of them became much more obedient, and fell asleep for a few days. However, their appetite became even more voracious after they woke up. We are slowly becoming unable to feed them anymore. If we can't feed them, we'll have to release them back into the Great Star Do Forest. Huo Yuhao shook his head and said, we can't send them back. The blood lineage of dark golden terraclaw bears is too strong. They are the enemies of almost all soul beasts. They are still so small now. If we send them back now, they'll definitely be attacked. We'll be harming them. How's their relationship with everyone right now? Jiang Nan Nan laughed, it's great. The 2 of them deliberately act cute all the time. They make everyone very happy. Huo Yuhao smiled and said, that's great. Eldest senior, what do you think if we send both of them to the Setting Sun Forest? Setting Sun Forest? You're saying? Bei Bei suddenly thought of something, and exchanged a glance with Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao nodded and said, the development of soul beasts is greatly tied to their energy intake. That place is most suitable for them. Since the Sun Moon Empire started this war, and things are getting more and more chaotic, the Tang sect also needs a stronger force to be protected by. If we let them remain there for some time, I believe they'll grow even faster. Bei Bei hesitated a little. Will it be too much? Huo Yuhao replied, nothing will happen to them. Many of the plant-type soul beasts there are 10,000-year soul beasts. They'll be strong enough to restrain them. With us around, those plant-type soul beasts won't dare to do anything to them either. Let's just leave them there. There aren't any other soul beasts, or natural enemies of dark golden terraclaw bears in the Setting Sun Forest anyway. It's the most suitable place for them. Bei Bei said, since this is the case, let's do it. I'll make a trip later and send them there. Huo Yuhao said, eldest senior, the poison over there is lethal, you. Bei Bei said, don't worry, teacher Xian's newly invented protective barrier for Class 7 all-terrain self-driving forts will be able to protect me. With my previous experience, I'll be fine as long as I'm careful. It's enough as long as I can fly across the mountain valley with my self-driving fort. Huo Yuhao was stunned. Self-driving forts can fly now. Everyone laughed when they heard him ask that. He Kai too chuckled and said, of course they can fly. Furthermore, we even gave them an apt name. Flying pigs. Huo Yuhao was speechless. Calling them flying pigs is indeed very apartment. All-terrain self-driving forts are very round. If they fly in the air, they will indeed seem like pigs. It's just that if teacher Xian learns about this nickname. Xiao Xiao laughed, all right, Yuhao just came back. Let's not talk about that, let's eat first. I'll go to the kitchen to take a look. Everyone sat down around a table. Not only was this a place for them to hold meetings, but it was also a place for them to dine together. Bei Bei looked at Huo Yuhao and asked, Yuhao, who are you thinking of bringing along with you? Apart from Sancha and Nan Nan. Me too. Before he even finished speaking, a voice already sounded eagerly. When Huo Yuhao turned his head to look, he saw Nan Qiuqiu sitting somewhere further away. She stretched out her hands with all her strength and looked very impatient. Huo Yuhao shook his head speechlessly and said, I wouldn't dare to bring you along. You can remain in the Tang sect. Nan Qiuqiu was displeased. Why? Am I that weak? I'm a six-ringed soul emperor. Bring me along. Yi Gai, who was sitting beside her, said, I want to go too. We'll listen to your instructions when we are performing missions. The two of them looked at Huo Yuhao and seemed very eager. They had been cultivating in the Tang sect since the beast tide. They couldn't help out much in terms of the Tang sect's daily matters. They were both young ladies, and thus they were very bored as time passed. Huo Yuhao was about to go on another mission after returning this time, and they were extremely eager as they volunteered themselves. As for whatever other intentions they harbored, only they themselves knew. Huo Yuhao furrowed his brow. In terms of abilities, Nan Qiuqiu and Yi Gai were rather good. They were both soul emperors now, and their martial souls were very special. Nan Qiuqiu's martial soul was of the annihilation element, while Yi Gai's martial soul was of the holy element. They were both very effective at dealing with evil soul masters. Naturally, it would be great if they could tag along. However, the two of them weren't like the rest of them in the Tang sect. It was very possible for them to get themselves into trouble. Under such circumstances, Huo Yuhao didn't know whether it was a good idea to bring them along. Bei said from one side, just bring them along. It'll be beneficial for them if they can venture outside. However, Qiuqiu and Gai, I have something that I have to say to the both of you. Bei turned serious and said, this mission isn't an ordinary one. It concerns your lives. The both of you must think about it carefully. At the same time, you must listen to Yuhao's instructions outside. Otherwise, the Tang sect won't be able to keep you. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Nan Qiuqiu flattened her lips. She wanted to say that he was biased, but she didn't dare to. Yi Gai tugged her slightly and nodded. She said seriously, eldest senior, don't worry. We'll definitely listen to Huo Yuhao's arrangements when we're outside. We won't make trouble for him. Bei's expression turned much friendlier, and he replied, that's great. We want to go too. Jing Ziyan, who was sitting to one side, raised her hand. She also tugged at Ji Juechen, who was beside her. Ji Juechen nodded strongly. Huo Yuhao was much less worried about the two of them. He smiled and said, great. Brother Ji and Sister Ziyan, come along too. However, eldest senior, I'm going to take so many people with me. What about things over here? Bei smiled and said, things will be fine here. The few of them won't be able to help me much even if they remain here. I won't have to be so worried if Brother Ji leaves. Ji Juechen didn't have any expression on his face even after Bei mocked him. He only looked at Huo Yuhao seriously. Even though he didn't say anything, Huo Yuhao could roughly guess what he was thinking. He sighed helplessly. He wasn't against sparring with Ji Juechen. Someone like Ji Juechen putting pressure on him was actually very beneficial to his cultivation. Bei nodded and said, this is it, then. Sancha, Nan Nan, Ziyan, Brother Ji, Qiuqiu and Gai, all of you will follow Yuhao to the Star Luo Empire's front line. He will be the one commanding all of you on this mission. You must all listen to his instructions. Tomorrow, we'll follow him into the Great Star Do Forest first, before you all set off. Yuhao, do you have anything to add? Huo Yuhao shook his head. Bei said, that's just fine. It's better for you guys to wait one more day before you leave. After we finish our meal, you'll follow me to look for Teacher Xian. The Tang sect's first batch of custom-made soul tools will be given to you guys, and I trust that they should be quite useful for your operation. All right. Huo Yuhao agreed. He wanted to look for Xian Zuan anyway. After experiencing the fighting strength of the Sun Moon Emperor's Soul Engineer Legions, He had many questions regarding soul tools that he wanted to ask teacher Xian. Nan Qiuqiu suddenly said, Yuhao, my mother asked me to tell you that you have to personally check out the place that we spoke about when you come back. Huo Yuhao was blank for a moment. He contemplated for a moment before remembering that Nan Shuishui did mention something before. She wanted to cooperate closely with the Tang sect, and she wanted him to check out some place. That place should be where there were exotic entities of ultimate ice. Huo Yuhao nodded and said, I'd have forgotten about that if you didn't remind me. However, we don't have much time right now. We'll check out that place after we complete our reconnaissance duties. Nan Qiuqiu said, Why don't we take a detour? My house is in the Heavenly Soul Empire's territory, and it's not that far from the academy. We'll need 4 to 6 hours to reach it, at most, if we use flying-type soul tools. After visiting the Great Star Do Forest tomorrow, we'll take a detour to my house, and then we'll travel to the Star Luo Empire. My mother says that place should be very beneficial for you. Huo Yuhao nodded and said, All right, then. Has your mother returned? Nan Qiuqiu shook her head in reply. My mother is in the city right now. The Earth Dragon sect has moved over here, and we haven't finished transporting everything. After you check that place out, and if you can take everything out from it, then we will finish moving into Shrek City. The Earth Dragon sect has already established close connections with the Tang sect. Bei Bei chimed in, yes. Senior Nan Shuishui is very courteous, and she's given us a lot of rare metals. It turned out that the Earth Dragon sect's previous leader had seen a business opportunity in rare metals back in the day, and had hoarded a large amount of rare metals for the Earth Dragon sect. This time, after the Earth Dragon sect moved to Shrek Academy, those rare metals were given to the Tang sect to purchase on credit, established a close cooperation with the Tang sect. Furthermore, Nan Shuishui announced that they didn't have to pay this debt for now. As long as someone in the Tang sect married Nan Qiuqiu, then those rare metals would be Nan Qiuqiu's dowry. That was a very extravagant and valuable dowry. Nan Shuishui naturally hoped that Nan Qiuqiu could follow Bei Bei or Huo Yuhao, but that was obviously quite unrealistic for now. However, even if Nan Qiuqiu couldn't marry either of them, there were many outstanding individuals within the Tang sect. Nan Shuishui had already decided to take their cooperation with the Tang sect one step further when she chose to move the Earth Dragon sect into Shrek City. Leaning on the Tang sect was undoubtedly very beneficial for the Earth Dragon sect's development. Reality had proved that her decision was correct. The Tang sect took large amounts of rare metals from the Earth Dragon sect, but the Tang sect also helped the Earth Dragon sect lay down solid and stable foundations inside Shrek City. The Earth Dragon sect managed to acquire quite a spacious area in Shrek City with the Tang sect's help, and this place was also relatively distant from the Great Star Do Forest region. This area was used to re-establish the Earth Dragon sect, and this land was also very cheap, which meant that it was almost given to them for free. At the same time, because of the Earth Dragon sect's intimate relationship with the Tang sect, they also received support from Shrek Academy. This meant the Earth Dragon sect's move into Shrek City naturally became extremely smooth. The construction of Shrek's new city meant Shrek City was now more than 5 times larger than before, and the city was likely to continue expanding, as well. With Shrek City's current location, and the addition of the Spirit Pagoda, their future development was limitless. The Earth Dragon and the Tang sect's intimate relationship also meant that the Earth Dragon sect's youngsters would also have priority in obtaining spirits. This was a great thing that was absolutely mutually beneficial. Therefore, Nan Shuishui was very satisfied and felt that she had accomplished her goals. She only hoped that Nan Qiuqiu could find a great husband inside the Tang sect, and she would use this marriage as a way to further strengthen the cooperation between their sects. That would make their relationship even more perfect. Everyone enjoyed dinner in a jovial mood, and Bei Bei even made an exception and allowed everyone to have some wine. Huo Yuhao went directly to the Tang sect's Soul Tool Hall after dinner, and stayed with Xian Ziwen for the entire night. Only they knew what they discussed. Huo Yuhao left some things with Xian Ziwen, and also took some other things with him when he left. The next morning, Huo Yuhao gathered his compatriots, and they departed as a group for Shrek Academy. He had already arranged things with Elder Xian, but if they wanted to go into the Great Star Dove Forest, they would still have to inform Elder Xian first. The Tang Sect's company had quite a few people. Everyone but Wang Donga from the Shrek's 7 monsters was present, and in addition to Nan Qiuqiu, Yi Gai, Ji Juechen, and Jing Ziyan, there were 10 people altogether. They deliberately waited until morning lessons started in the academy before they went over. Otherwise, with the Tang Sect's current reputation, they would attract everyone's attention once they entered the academy grounds. The sea god's lake's waters sparkled and rippled. It was as clear and limpid as it had always been, and the smell that was so familiar and new at the same time refreshed Huo Yuhao, who hadn't slept for the entire night. Huo Yuhao had had a long discussion with Xian Ziwen last night. He told teacher Xian everything that he had heard and seen, while Xian Ziwen gave him an even deeper explanation into what he knew regarding the death god. Huo Yuhao had been thinking at a high degree continuously, and even for someone like him who had such formidable spiritual power, he still felt a little exhausted. As for Xian Ziwen, he fell asleep right after Huo Yuhao left, and he probably would only wake up that night. Huo Yuhao tapped lightly on the ground with his foot and drifted across the sea god's lake. He was already a soul sage, but he didn't choose flight. Instead, he opted for what he did back during the sea god's fate, and a small patch of ice would form beneath his feet from his soul power of ultimate ice whenever his foot touched the lake's surface, supporting his steps. Shu Sanxia followed behind him. He was very opportunistic, and just followed in Huo Yuhao's footsteps. He didn't have to release any soul power at all, and just stepped on the ice blocks that Huo Yuhao had created. The sea god's island came into view after over 10 leaps. A pretty figure was standing on the lake shore in the distance, gazing in their direction. This girl's long pinkish-blue hair was tied into scorpion braids, and her hair dangled in front of her as she fiddled with the ends of it. Her large, beautiful eyes seemed like they could talk as she stared at the people leaping across the lake. She was clad in a white warrior robe, which brought out her slender and exquisite figure. Her lips were rosy and alluring, and she was so brilliant that the morning sun covered her in a layer of golden radiance. Huo Yuhao immediately felt a little dazed when he saw her. He slipped a little on the ice block that his soul power had created on the lake's surface, and immediately lost his balance. This was entirely unimaginable for a soul sage, but it happened to Huo Yuhao at this moment. Countless images surfaced and flickered in his memory. Some scenes were of Wang Donga as he saw her for the first time, when he came to Shrek Academy, and some showed Donga's attractiveness and brilliance when he first saw her in girl's clothing during the sea god's fate right there on the sea god's lake. Some other scenes in between contained his experiences when he first became acquainted with her. Everything made him feel a little lost and dazed. Huo Yuhao fell backwards, and his right foot slipped into the lake water. Huo Yuhao only recovered when the lake's ice-cold water rinsed the bottom of his foot, and he tapped on the lake's surface lightly before jerking up and rising back into the sky. He hastily created another ice block where he descended before he managed to regain his balance. However, Shu Sanxia had already arrived behind him when he lost his balance. Shu Sanxia was startled when Huo Yuhao fell backwards, and he hurriedly paused in midair. Shu Sanxia was quite mischievous. Huo Yuhao could see Tang Wutong standing on the lake shore, which meant that he could naturally see her as well. Shu Sanxi's 6 soul rings rose instantly, and his 4th soul ring lit up in the next moment as black light flickered. Tang Wutong couldn't even react on the lake shore before she switched positions with Shu Sanxia. Tang Wutong's cultivation wasn't low, but Shu Sanxi's mysterious netherworld displacement was way too sudden. This soul skill was powerful enough to be called a divine skill among Shu Sanxi's many soul skills, and even Huo Yuhao had used his Spirit Eye's 5th soul skill, spiritual duplication, to duplicate mysterious netherworld displacement on several occasions. Tang Wutong also seemed to be a little dazed when she saw Huo Yuhao bounding across the lake. Something in her mind seemed to have been triggered, and she was staring at Huo Yuhao's stunned face at the same moment Shu Sanxia used mysterious netherworld displacement on her. Her vision blurred as her surroundings changed. Afterwards, she realized that she was standing on the lake's surface, and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Huo Yuhao was still descending from the sky at this point. The exclamation that came from behind him was all too familiar, and he spun around in midair without hesitation. Coincidentally, he met Tang Wutong's surprised expression as she was dropping into the water. Huo Yuhao activated his left leg's soul bone immediately. He was several meters away from Tang Wutong, but he arrived in front of her with instant teleportation. He grabbed her arms with both hands and stabilized her. Their eyes met at that moment. Huo Yuhao's eyes were full of longing and tenderness, and Tang Wutong's startled eyes were a little stunned when she saw them. She could feel those strong hands of his holding onto her arms, and for some reason, she felt very safe and secure, even though she was hovering above the lake's surface. A dash of cold flowed into the lake, and they were standing on an ice block when they came down from the air. Tang Wutong's momentary daze disappeared, and she immediately frowned as she growled, "Release me." Huo Yuhao subconsciously released his hands. Tang Wutong glared at him furiously before she surged into the air and flew straight for the lakeshore. She was also a soul sage, and she could fly through the air with her soul power without releasing her martial soul. This video will end here.